Well, Sean, I'm so excited to have you on the show. I have recently gotten into cycling myself, and I am also a huge fan of the ketogenic diet. And so I'm excited to have you talk about your journey and the major things that you are achieving as a fat adapted athlete.
Thank you very much for having me. It's actually wonderful to be able to share my journey with this lifestyle. I think if I can get off by saying, we'll start by saying, my only regret is not starting sooner or not discovering this sooner. It's a very I think going down this journey of being somebody who is predominantly a fat burner for energy, it's effectively made me look at the entire world through a different lens. It's made me view everything from the way people behave, the way people's their views, their outlooks. It's even I would go as far as saying I'm even starting to really sort of think that we did, or maybe I should rather say we came from somewhere else. The reason why I say this is because we are still, with all the technology we have and the history we have, we are still debating things like medicine, nutrition. If we were an established or I would say an advanced race, we wouldn't, as the humankind in its entirety, I don't believe we would be, with the age of smart devices, always being connected, technology. I don't believe we would be arguing what the right foods are to eat. So, and I've also sort of, I'm very cautious in how I approach discussing a diet or types of diet, because I don't want to come across as somebody who's tyrannical with regards to forcing my agenda down somebody else's sort of throat. And it's effectively a right to choose what you want to do. I'm definitely, I could be classified as a libertarian, not a liberal, but a libertarian. I believe in live and let live, and respecting others' views and values, and I don't want to encroach on somebody else's way of life. If somebody wants to ask a question, if somebody's interested, I will do my utmost to give an answer. Whether it's the right answer or a wrong answer, I'll give an answer. I don't know everything, and I'm definitely discovering new things all the time. The one thing I can say is that I am discovering my body is definitely still adapting after 7 years of practicing a low carb, high fat or ketogenic diet. I'm still adapting and I'm still experimenting. Of late, I've gone more carnivore, eating more meat and more protein in my diet, and I'm definitely feeling negative and positive effects. But it's just my own journey. But the long and the short of it, it just goes back to kind of, where did we actually come from? Why are we still debating? Why is there still a heated debate of what nutrition is good for you? One could argue that I really believe that carbohydrates is, for me, in the way I view it, is it's definitely not the right fuel for me. And if I look at the history of carbohydrates and the origins of grains and crops, it goes back to 5,000 years ago. And crops have basically ruled our lives ever since. It's made us, it stopped us from basically evolving as physically evolving. Of course, we're evolving mentally, and there is definitely a more of an evolution in mind and thought and the human brain. But I believe that we've become weaker because we've become such a sedentary and a race that really wants to become sort of a sense of entitlement, if one could say that. I mean, even technology is making us weak. I mean, cars have doors and bonnets and boots that open automatically. We can press a button and we get the stuff delivered to our door. We are becoming weaker, and with the various governing bodies around the world that still advocate, the use of sugar and carbohydrate, coupled with technology and a self-entitlement and getting it on demand with pressing a button, it's making us weaker, and it's creating more health conditions. So I really think and feel that, we need to, nothing can, can, regardless of what diet you practice, if one wants to get into shape, and one needs to clarify what their specific goals are. And, it's a simple mathematic rule of your input needs to be less than your output. And it takes work. It takes an effort to achieve something physical. And it does take work if you have been sort of bombarding yourself with carbohydrates, and you are either suffering from insulin resistance or you have metabolic syndrome. It's going to take a lot of work to reboot your system and to get out of that. And this is a hard concept for people to fathom, because they're always looking for this magic pill, this quick fix. So regardless of what diet you practice, you still have to put the effort in. You still have to have the caloric burn. You still have to apply the necessary rest with regards to anything. And all these, the diets, I don't like to use the word diet, because diet is such a short-lived practice. There's all these diets out there. So, in my mind, the key, I call it, I've got a nickname, I call it the keto culture. And it's a lifestyle. It's something I adopt because I don't go out to eat. I eat at different times. I don't look at my watch, and I don't even wear a watch. I don't look at the time and say, well, it's time to eat something. I eat to hunger. I will look at the amount of caloric burn that I do on the bike, or kilojoule burn that I'll do on the bike, and then I'll eat. I'll eat accordingly, or I will eat extra. I'll throw in another egg, or another 2 eggs, or another 3 eggs into my meal, because it's very hard for people to fathom. And I'll touch on another point, and I really am talking a lot here. So the food has become a very much a part of entertainment for the human race. It really is. So we go out for a meal, we go and visit friends, we sit down, we'll have a couple of drinks. It's very part of our culture and our modern culture and modern civilization to sit and have a meal together. So, and a lot of people kind of have created a food environment for themselves, and they're caught in the spiral. And if you look at most Westerners, they what I call, they get the middle-age spread. They start to adopt the pear shape. It's kind of around the 30s and the 40 age group, and that is basically insulin resistance. Because the way I look upon it, no one's born fat. No one's born fat. I mean, you get chubby babies, they grow into it. But your parents have such a responsibility to give you the right nutrition. And, you know, if you look at a lot of endurance athletes, why are they out of shape now, you know, post their careers? But I don't train as much. They don't do this the same. No, that's because they're still eating the same volumes, and they're possibly eating the wrong kinds of food, you know, to stay in shape. You know, I mean, you can look at, I mean, a prime candidate is Eddie Merckx. I mean, here's a guy that is the most revered professional cyclist in the world. And he looks, I mean, the guy's totally out of shape. But why? And the reason for that being is because all those years of being bombarded with carbohydrates is taking its toll. People think that, you know, well, if they've got this, it's like a latent understanding that their digestive systems are infinite. They don't wear out, that their organs don't wear out, because modern nutritionists will prescribe 5 small meals a day because you want to keep your blood glucose levels stable, you know, so you don't go into that hunger shock. And people must realize that our digestive systems are like our joints, are like our muscles, are like our eyes, our, you know, our hearing. That ages as we get older. Our eyes don't become as effective with sight. So why is our digestive system, our organs, immune from aging? You're consistently bombarding it with food all the time. And on another avenue of thought, one would think that we are entrapped by our food. We are entrapped, enslaved by carbohydrates, if one could think that way, because we get hungry all the time if you're practicing a high carb, low fat diet. I mean, take it on. A lot of people also in the cycling world, you know, they always want to go faster, and there's like this hidden agenda. Why is the cycling world still prescribing or advocating carbohydrate? Because it's been scientifically proven to be more effective for high performance exercise. And then I will ask, well, how many people? I mean, there are, I think in the last stats in the US alone, and this is a comprehensive people. These are people that ride to work, use a bicycle for transport, casual cyclists, cycling enthusiasts. The whole myriad of cycling in the US is 50 million cyclists. That was from a 2018 study. And if the industry is advocating, oh, you must use carbohydrates to fuel, you know, for your rides, and specifically, you've got somebody who's taken up cycling because they have a health condition, they want to lose weight, and then they walk into a store. They buy the bike, and the shop assistant will say, well, you need some energy for the ride. And what you know, you're getting advice, and this is what the pros use. And you know, it's like basically 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. And they just they feel good. Everybody feels good on carbohydrates because carbohydrates does make you feel good. That constant sugar spike, I mean, everybody knows that it creates a chemical reaction in your brain. And there are many studies and many articles linking carb addiction and cocaine addiction to the same areas of the brain that are stimulated. And there's one article that's on the net that states carbs is 8 times more addictive than cocaine. So when people are defending the carbs, maybe they're just defending their addiction. No, that's my opinion. They couldn't bear to give this stuff up because it's so hard to give up. It's so hard to give up. And you know, there's nothing, I mean, the entire cycling world there's nothing more satisfying or gratifying than going for a long, hard ride, maybe achieving a personal best in Strava, or beating your mates at something, or just doing an epic ride, coming back off the ride, sitting down for a pizza and a beer. And your brain knows, is lusting for it, and you're probably getting hyperglycemia, and you've got a little bit of a bonk during the ride, and you have that first bite of the pizza, the messaging through your tongue, and it's your dopamine, your serotonin it's just gone haywire, and you get that that feeling just so good. But what's actually happening is that poor little pancreas and those little beta cells in your pancreas are just now working overtime, because you've had 6 bananas, 7 gels, you finished 2 liters of sugary water, and the damage that you're doing to your body long term is just not worth it. It's just not worth it.
Right.
So
that's something that I've noticed, and I'm kind of glad you brought that up, because the more I spend time in the athletic world, the more and more I see these athletes that later on down the road, be it have you whatever sport they're in, they all of a sudden seem to be struggling with major weight gain or metabolic syndrome. And I feel like there's a common denominator in there. Especially, I think I told you that I'm coming from the bodybuilding industry, moving into cycling, and I was
also a bodybuilder.
Yeah,
that's where my interest in nutrition first started, was 20 years ago, when I did practice bodybuilding. Yeah, so carry on.
And so you understand what I'm saying here. When you start to see a lot of these people, and I used to hear it all the time when I first got into bodybuilding, a lot of these people are like, well, after people are done bodybuilding, though, they usually get fat. And I was like, really? No, that's not going to happen to me, And, lo and behold, a couple years into it, I started really struggling with taking weight back off, and severe hunger all the time. And why the hell would you be hungry when you're eating 5 meals a day? That sounds ridiculous, And I start looking around me and seeing more and more athletes that have the same kind of story, whatever sport they're in, they're having troubles with their metabolism, their blood sugar. There's a lot of underlying health conditions going on. And I started to wonder, like, well, what the heck's up with this, And I feel like it's because we're constantly pounding ourselves full of carbohydrates. And I'm not like a keto evangelist or anything. I think that there's a proper thing for every person, right? So maybe somebody does operate a little bit better on carbohydrates. Okay, cool. But I think the constant bombarding of carbohydrates on our body, like you said, our pancreas is getting tired. It's not designed to be processing so much sugar.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, look, I mean, just getting back to the bodybuilding, if you look at the pioneers of the sport, just from the days of Weider and onwards. I mean, I'm just trying to think of some names there. Frank Zane, and those guys, they actually practiced a carnivore keto diet, and they had one cheat day of where they carb loaded. But their 6-day-a-week kind of regime was very much close to a ketogenic carnivore diet. And I struggled to put on a weight when I was a bodybuilder, and then I started training with a local guy here. I forget his name now, but and because I used to train with him to almost push the same amount of weight as he did. And I just struggled to put on weight. I just couldn't put on weight at all. So, I used to come with an energy bar to the gym. And those days was carbs. I've only been keto now for 7 years. So in those days I was eating carbs. And I said to him, I said, look, I just can't put on weight. So he says, he laughed. He says, well, you just come here with an energy bar and you leave, you've got to eat. And he taught me how to eat. And I remember, I think that I put on 10 kilograms in 6 months. naturally aspirated. And it was purely from carbs. Carbs actually helped me put on the weight. I used to eat a bowl of rice, a serving of it was for 4 people. That was in between meals, and I used to eat 20 eggs a day, 20 to 30 eggs a day in between meals, in order to put on the weight. And the reason that I'm mentioning this is because it's a simple thing. You want to gain weight, you eat. You want to lose weight, you don't eat. Because when I stopped bodybuilding, I stopped force feeding myself. I think I lost 8 kilos immediately. I dropped 8 kilos in 4 weeks without even trying, because the body was just wasn't getting the fuel to sustain the weight. But it's if I think back to then, if I was doing bodybuilding now, I'd certainly be full carnivore, absolutely full carnivore. I think Sean Baker is definitely a witness, is a testament to the success of being full carnivore, and that nutrient dense meat is just fantastic, and like real good fatty meat. And of course, if you're just doing explosive work, you just upload the protein, and you've got the glucose via the high amounts of protein in your diet. And it's just such a simple thing. You just eat until you're full, whether it's half a kilo of steak or a kilo of steak, and then you carry on. But that's just my sort of way I'd approach it. And getting back to the very beginning of this conversation, I'm a human being. Some people think I'm not, but the point I'm trying to make is we still, with all the technology and all the research, still arguing about what foods are good and what foods are bad for us. And once again, to reiterate my point, I don't want to be this evangelist for the ketogenic diet. I practice it. It works for me. I love it. I regret not practicing it sooner. I regret ever eating sugar, and I regret ever touching bread. But I was really at the mercy of my parents, because that's what they gave me. If I had to bring up children today, I would I would not give them any sugar whatsoever. I wouldn't even give them fruit. I mean, the occasional fruit I eat is an avo. And if there's a tomato in a salad that I'm eating out, and I hardly eat out. I don't think I've eaten out in 6 months. I'll eat a tomato, but what's in my fridge now is just canned sardines, mincemeat, steak, and eggs. That's what's in my fridge, and I get my oils from macadamia nut oils, olive oils, and coconut oil. That's where I get my lots of fat. And I keep it simple, because I'm not eating for pleasure. I'm eating to fuel my life, to fuel my rides. It's so debilitating being hungry all the time. It's so debilitating feeling that bonk on the bike, and not being able. You actually go into like almost like a state of shock. And I don't want that personally.
Right.
I want to be sustainable. That's what I want. It's not
Sean,
about being the fastest. Yeah.
And I'm glad you brought that up with kids, and I hate to interrupt you right here, but you
No
make
worries,
a really valid point with this. So I noticed that a lot of parents are constantly trying to get their kids to eat. They're like, oh, do you want a snack? Do you want to eat this? Do you want to eat that? You've got to eat this, all of this. Kids have a much higher tendency of fasting than adults do, I've noticed.
Yeah.
Maybe, and I don't feed my kids the standard American diet, so maybe that's where that happens. But I noticed that sometimes my daughter will eat 1 meal a day, and she won't eat anything else until like late at night. She won't be hungry. And she starts her breakfast with, it's just bacon and eggs, and she eats that almost
Beautiful.
every single day. And I noticed that after she eats all of that, she essentially is fasting herself. And I'm not like, hey, do you want a snack? Do you want to eat this snack? No, because you are naturally going to eat when you are hungry. And especially the thing is if you're riding that blood sugar roller coaster, you're going to be much more hungry much sooner because your body is getting these mixed signals on what it actually wants. But when you're eating protein and fats, you're satiated for so long, you can go all day eating hardly anything.
Well, have you ever seen a child in a candy store? I mean, you must be. They go nuts. Because they don't know what's going on with them, because the parent gave them a treat at a young age, and they don't know what's going on. They just the brain is now triggered by all this sugar, and the sight. They know what it is, and they know what the sensation they get, and you give them the sweet, and they are like missiles. And then all of a sudden they get that crash, and they're, "Mommy, I'm hungry," or "Daddy, I'm hungry." So it's a wicked cycle that basically starts at a young age. And I would go as far as saying, I won't say that, but I'll just reiterate, I will not give my kids sugar or fruit. And what if they go to school, and what if they go out to a friend and they get sugar? The parents will get strict instructions. Don't feed my kids, or they just won't go back again. It's very simple. And until my child can fend for itself, I'm not going to, but that's not the real world. No, but that's my world.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but for your kids, but please don't ruin my kid's life.
Well, and that's one thing that's really hard is, man, people think that you're ruining your kid's life by not giving them sugar. And I've noticed, like, my child will go to somebody's house, and the first thing they'll do is like hand them something that I would not feed them, and they'll be like, "Childhood restored," they'll tell me, or something like that. They're like, "Oh, you're going to give your kids some kind of orthorexia over food," or things like that. But that's not the case. I'm happy that my kids, I'm hoping, this is my hope as a parent, I give them the right tools for their toolbox so that at least they can break them out and use them if they need to. In the end, they're going to make their own choices, but I'm trying to teach them how to make the right ones and how to do what's right for them from a health standpoint.
Yeah, if I use myself as an example, I was born to a vegetarian mother and father, and they weren't vegetarian by choice; they were vegetarian by circumstance. And they weren't affluent. And I think in my first 2 years of being on this planet, I ate really a poor vegetarian diet, which basically consisted of little bits of vegetables, lettuce and cabbage. And that's what my mother ate. So when I was breastfed, I was getting this really crap breast milk. And I was born deaf. So I was born with infections in my middle ear, and after 11 ear ops and 4 grommet replacements, I got my hearing back, and I lived my life on gamma globulin injections. And then as I we still ate a mainstream high carb, low fat diet growing up. When my father started to make a little bit more money, he was a pharmacist. And but I'll tell you an interesting story. My younger brother, and this is a very interesting story. So it's, if you look at I had a younger sister. She passed away. Got an older sister. And if you look at us as 3 adults today, we 3 adults. We all we all, even though we grew up in the same home, we were kind of treated differently. And how we've evolved and become. And my sister has got a terrible weight problem. It's evident. And she can blame it on her ovarian cysts. And I've got a friend of mine. She's actually a best friend of mine. She's also suffered from the same ovarian cysts, and she's also got Hashimoto's disease. Okay, and you as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. And she's got it all under control because she's ketogenic, and she's a doctor. Mm-hmm. She's a doctor. And the reason for, and I honestly believe the Hashimoto's disease is basically from carbohydrates. You just pound on your poor thyroid. It's metabolic syndrome. So that's, look, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a trained nutritionist, but I'll tell you now, as Prof. Tim Noakes says, there's no medical school in the world that actually teaches nutrition. They probably touch on it for like, but there's, when you go to your GP and you ask them, well, what should I eat? They said, you must eat a balanced diet. Okay. I mean, even my GP, even my doctor that I see has told me that I know more about nutrition than she does.
Well, it's funny because I've had a couple doctors on this podcast, and they've all told me that they get about 2 days of nutrition in their schooling. So yeah, I mean, we should definitely be taking advice from them. Yeah.
I only go and see my doctor if I need a prescription or if I need something stitched up. But if I'm ill, I just take some echinacea, or and I hardly get ill anymore. So, so the point I'm trying to make is that, just getting back to my brother, we all ate this diet at home, and my brother lived off meat, just meat and milkshakes. We once tried to force feed him. Well, it wasn't a force feed him. We said, look, eat an apple. He threw up the apple. He couldn't tolerate it. Okay. He actually threw it up. He got bilious from eating an apple. And he literally lived off dairy and this biltong, which is dried meat. Okay. That's all he ate. That's all he ate. I'm not joking.
Wow.
My brother had a body to die for. At a young, he became a provincial champion gymnast. He became a national champion platform diver. He then took up rock climbing. He was the youngest climber at that time to red point a certain grade in South Africa. He could just do one-arm pull-ups like until the cows came home. And I remember him going to the climbing wall and he just took his middle fingers, because somebody was climbing with no hands. So he just took his 2 middle fingers and just used the middle fingers to climb up the wall. He was like sculpted. He was sculpted. Okay. And unfortunately, Grant had a terrible accident, which he got a traumatic aneurysm on his aorta, and he was clinically dead for 22 minutes. And he had some pioneering heart surgery, and his aorta now is made out of Dacron, but he kind of, I think, lost the edge to do anything physical, and he started eating badly. He started eating terribly, and he got a book, drinking, and he got the middle-age spread, lost his, he now lives in the States, but I've lost contact with him. But the long and the short of it is, he had the ideal diet growing up, and it all changed. And if you look at somebody like my sister, unfortunately, she still partakes in hopefully, well, like keto now, but I don't know what really goes on. But the long or the short of it is, if you look at us three, we all look different. We came from the same mother and father. We've got the same genetics, but we all ate differently. I've managed to maintain my physical abilities for as long as possible, this late into the game. But I believe, with regards to us, the Sakinofskys, it's got to do with, we shouldn't be touching carbohydrates at all. It's not in our gene pool, and that was the motivation factor for me to become ketogenic. Was not a performance thing. Was, if I looked at my ancestors, both mother and father, they all died of cancer and heart failure. Mother and father's ancestral lineage, and they all ate traditional high carbohydrate, low fat diet. And if I look at my entire family dying of cancer and heart, I said, well, something's got to change, because the height of insanity is repeating the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So I thought out the box. That's what I did. I was already practicing a paleo diet, so I wasn't really eating bread or grains then. And then I just stopped eating the fruit and the sugar. I was actually involved in a supplement company that preached and practiced carbohydrate consumption. I got out of it because I could no longer really promote it. It wasn't for me. It wasn't from the heart.
So, at what point did you decide you were going to move into a ketogenic diet? And I mean, for
It
you,
was
obviously,
post my father's death. Post my
okay.
father's death in 2013.
So
In
that was
2013.
the
Yeah,
motivation to make some changes.
correct. Yeah, correct.
All
I
right.
watched it. I watched my father die a terrible death of cancer. Terrible death of cancer. Yeah.
And as an elite athlete, I mean, you're an elite cyclist. Were you
I wouldn't call
concerned with?
myself an elite. I wouldn't call myself an elite. I don't participate in any races. I do occasionally at this Grand Fondo in Jordan just for shits and giggles. But I ride on average now between 15 to 20,000 kilometers a year. I don't come home from a ride unless I tick over 100 kilometers. I only feel like good after 50 kilometers on the bike. And I would say my average speeds and my power outputs are very respectable, specifically at somebody at my age. I'm going to be 50 in 2 years' time. So yeah, I mean, I haven't. I mean, I've ridden with youngsters who are 20 plus years my junior, okay, who claim to be really good cyclists, and they also vegan. And really, if I really wanted to, I would leave them in the dust. Really, that's how, when people claim a lot of things, you've got to back it up with actions. So yeah, look, I don't ride to compete. I ride to ride. I don't ride to please other people. I ride to please myself. So, and that's my, I live to ride. I mean, cycling is my absolute passion.
Now, my extreme interest with you is not only are you doing these things from a fat adapted standpoint, you do a lot of these long rides. Recently, you did a fundraiser for
Well,
Professor
it wasn't
Noakes.
it was an awareness. It was an awareness campaign.
Oh,
So yeah,
okay.
it was just it was a lifestyle statement more than anything else.
And you
And
did how much completely fasted for how long?
10 hours. It was, and I burnt 6,000 calories in that 10 hours. Yeah. The data is on Zwift and Strava. So I wanted to carry on, but I actually was. I'll tell a little story. I actually came to the ride. I wasn't in the best of shape. I obviously I woke up 2 days before, like coughing and like really had something in my chest which I just wasn't happy about, and I had a little bit of a headache. I wasn't feverish, but I just wasn't feeling good, and I just remember taking 2 painkillers and riding down to the event, because there's no ways on God's green earth that I was gonna fail this task, because I know all my doubters and naysayers would have a field day on it. And there was just when I felt bad, I just felt something else kicks in. It's a personal thing. It's something just kicks in, and I just got this like real, sorry, I'm just gonna have to be a bit rude here, like fuck you attitude, and I just go for it. And I was power. I really was power. And I think I stopped twice during the ride. Once was I had a professional photographer come take some snaps. And the other was just to go to the toilet. But I rode for the goal was 9 hours non-refueled, and I did 10 just to throw in an extra hour. And the reason why I came up with this is because I did a Grand Fondo in Jordan, and my goal was not to win the race. My goal was just to ride the 198 kilometers through the Jordanian desert without taking any fuel. And I rode at a solid pace. And I finished the race. The race took 5 hours and 46 minutes, I think, for me. And I went back to the hotel. I packed my bike back into the bag. 2 hours later, I grabbed something to eat. And that was evidence to to the diet, and people were on social media said, no, it's impossible, there's no ways. And the organizers actually came onto the social media platform and testified. They said, we actually watched it, we couldn't believe it, because everyone was calling their support vehicles and throwing down the carbohydrate drinks and the energy bars and the gels and everything. And I was just watching this going down, and I just rode right through there. I didn't even stop for a piss. I mean, I did crash in the end because I had a little bit of a mechanical, but that was, I got back on the bike and, finished. So it was, and then I realized that, shit, I wonder how far I could go without, so I just kept on saying 9 hours, just add water, 9 hours, just add water. And then COVID hit us, and then I had no opportunity to go and do this 9 hours. So I decided, and I never had an indoor trainer. And then a mate of mine dropped off the rollers, and I rode like an hour on the rollers. I hadn't ridden rollers since 1991, so I had to get used to it. And I just love sitting in that position and pedaling. So every day I just went 1 hour, 1.5 hours, 2 hours, 3 hours. And somebody on social media said, why didn't you try 6 hours? Did 6 hours. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to go for the 9 hours. And then I see that there is a world record of 24 hours for riding on rollers. But the bloke kind of stopped for tea and did some yoga routines, played some chess in between. And I thought to myself, maybe I should give that a whack, But, it was just getting back to what I wanted to do was effectively, it wasn't a sporting achievement. It was a lifestyle statement. Everyone says that you need carbs to fuel your system, you need carbs to operate. I rode for 10 hours on a set of rollers. And let me just tell you something, you've got to be kind of awake when you're riding on rollers because you aren't locked in. You've got to use the centrifugal force to stay up. I did that for 10 hours, 6,000 calories later. I was so excited about the event. I had to force feed myself stuff the night before. And there was, because I wasn't hungry, I just realized, well, Sean, you better eat something. Took a handful of, I think I took 5 omega oil capsules, fish oil capsules before I left, and just for some extra fat. What's this? 50 calories there. So, it's, and that's what I did, it's, even Prof Noakes said you couldn't believe it could be done. I did. No problem.
That's pretty amazing. And I know, like for myself, I've recently kind of moved into cycling. I used to just be a commuter cyclist and I would cycle back and forth to work. And then I started going out because of COVID, I canceled my gym membership and I now have a gym in my basement. But for cardio, I was just doing 30 minutes on the bike every day. And then I started noticing that I really like doing the bike. And so my distances got further and further and further. And I haven't told a ton of people, obviously now they're going to know, but I am hoping to participate in my first Gran Fondo, which is in another 6 weeks or so, which is 120 miles, same as you did, only it's not in the desert. So, but that's what I've been experimenting with I am fat adapted. I do really well when I'm actually fasted. And so now I'm trying to decide if I want to consider attempting this race fasted. And with regards to doing a fasted, I just want to clarify something. I ride all my rides without refueling. So, and I don't do it on purpose. I do it because I don't feel I need additional fuel, or maybe I'm not riding hard enough. And I think one of the reasons why I'm not a full carnivore is that I do find that the high protein intake affects my blood glucose levels because of the glyconeogenesis that takes place. Me too.
So I really feel much better with personally with being keto, and from a performance aspect. And I'm hiding nothing. All my data is on Strava. I always do kind of like a little effort on the way home. because I live on quite a steep incline on the way home, and I push out consistently the same amount of power. There's no refueling, and I always you see there's proper, there's no dip in the power towards. I feel stronger towards the end. I mean, I've experienced like a feeling of hypoglycemia momentarily. Well, I wouldn't say for like say 10 or 15 minutes, but I actually ride it out. Like I can feel like the effects of my lucidness, the way I'm feeling in my brain. It's also like I just get into another zone, another level. I can ride myself properly into ketosis, and I actually ride myself stronger, which is actually very, very interesting. And I've watched many a YouTuber or vlogger who does these cycling vlogs, how they need the carbohydrates. This one lady, she was like lying on the side of the road, like almost crying because she was in a state of hypoglycemia. Who wants to be like that? Really?
I find it interesting because let's see, this last week I did a 24-hour fast just because I wasn't hungry, and it just kind of it wasn't planned. I ate my breakfast at work, ended up working through my lunch break, and then didn't get out of work till late at night. And I didn't want to throw a bunch of food at myself late at night before bed because that affects my sleep. And I was just like, yeah, I'm just going to pass on it. And I woke up the next morning after being fasted nearly 24 hours, hopped on the bicycle, rode 24 miles, and I noticed I was stronger. My ride was stronger, and I performed better after I was fasted longer. And I've started to notice this thing happening to me whenever I fast, and the longer I fast, the better my performance is, which you would think is kind of weird, but my legs don't get tired like they do when I have a lot of food on board, I guess I would say, or it's kind of weird. And so that's where with this race that I have coming up, I'm trying to decide what I want to do, because I'm like, I really like the feeling of not building as much lactic acid. So I've been experimenting with like going fasted for long periods of time and then going fasted for my rides and things like that. I know, but here's the thing, I only can get about 3 hours in totally fasted. Like yesterday, I was doing some really hard climbs, and at about 30 miles into doing a bunch of hard climbs, I didn't get hypoglycemic. That's the weird part. I don't go hypoglycemic, but I feel all of a sudden there's this threshold that's met where I start to lose energy again. So I'm still trying to balance that out.
I think the average person who's just started cycling, or a couple of months into cycling, or any endurance sport, they misconstrued a lack of fitness for a lack of energy. So they just think, well, maybe I just need some more carbohydrate or another energy bar, more energy, because the energy is, and also you're watching like the grand tours and the pros, and they're sucking this energy down, and that's what they're doing. So I've got to do that. This is how I'm going to get fitter. And it's just with regards to being fasted, and I mean, I'm kind of toying with the idea of trying to get some exogenous ketones, and just maybe sampling that to just to try it. Not because I need the energy, but I'm just thinking, well, maybe you will need the energy one day, and what do you eat? What do you want to take? And so, I mean, I use a lot of MCT oils, and just to package that into some MCT oils. I was thinking about taking some macadamia nut butter, but I'm a little bit wary of nuts now with oxalates. With oxalates in food. I actually got kidney stones from eating too many almonds and spinach. It was one of my go-to snacks, with spinach and almonds, and I got kidney stones from that. So so I'm very wary of once again, the myriad of kind of foods that are out there. I just like to keep it simple. It's like we machines at the end of the day. Our systems machines. It's like like a car. You don't. If it takes unleaded petrol or petroleum, you don't go and stick diesel in it.
Well, that's the funny thing. Biologically, that's the funny thing about human beings, right?
Yeah.
Every other thing out there, like sea creatures, cows, you name it, wildlife, all of this stuff has been doing the same dang thing for years.
100%.
It's eating grass.
Observation. Yeah.
It's eating grass, it's walking around, it hunts things, it eats the same thing. It's not, we are like the only being out there, I'm pretty sure, and I'm no biologist, but we're the only being out there that every year we have to make a new kind of food, a new kind of lab made something, a new iPhone. We have to make a new iPhone. I mean, what's wrong with our old iPhone? Our old iPhone works just fine, makes calls, does our workouts, it does everything, right? But next year there's going to be a new one. And I guess sometimes less is more. We don't need to constantly be changing all of these things. We need to thrive in the world we're in.
You see, I mean, I would say it's okay, technology and getting new tech, that's fine. But with regards to food, that's a really good observation that the animals there that are changing very diet. I mean, I saw recently something about vegan cheese being made out of wood. It was like, really? Seriously? Now we must eat wood? It's what? It's like, it's the problem. I think the problem with mankind in general, and I speak like I'm an outsider, but I think the problem is their ideologies don't mix with their biology, and we become too intelligent for our own good, and then you kind of ask yourself, maybe once again there's something else that was at play, and maybe we were just kind of like used and left to fend for ourselves later on. And if you think of the grander scheme of thing about the universe and how old the universe is and how evolved we are as a creature or a being, you kind of like thinking we're just a blip on the horizon. We don't really even exist really with regards to how big the universe is and how old it is, and so it's like kind of like, what is it? And also, if I get back to my original, I don't want to be tyrannical about it. You kind of like those people who have changed their diets from a diet in which we have evolved from. And let's face it, we have evolved from eating meat and high fat. That's that's what the Paleolithic man ate. I find a lot of people who practice other diets are very militant about, and critical, and they get really triggered. And one should ask, maybe that's not maybe that's a byproduct of the nutrition that's in them. If you look at nature, going back again to nature, you've got the deer and the buck and everything. They are kind of, they graze and they're always looking around because they don't want to be eaten, Mm-hmm. And then you've got the predators, the lions and the tigers and the jaguars. They bask in the sun, they're lazing around. They're chilled, man. They're chilled. They're not even like, they're not phased. And that's, that's got to do with their diet, They're just digesting their meat and they're chilled. But those grazing animals, they're wide. They're like looking around. And I just think that's what happens if you adopt like these ideological diets, and ethical reasons. I think it changes your behavior. Mm-hmm. And it's like you have to force it down other people's throats to change, because this is the right way. This is it's my way, and I want you to also be this way, because I'm right and it's wrong. Animals are, they've got rights too. Now life is very interesting. If you had to face a lion in the wild, you can't expect it not to eat you, because you won't eat the lion. It's going to eat you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if it's hungry, and if it's in its territory, it's going to eat you. That's what's going to happen. So, we're part of the food chain. We can be food. We can be, we can be the predator. It's the same sort of thing as, you can extend this conversation, which I don't want to do, but same thing to politics. You can achieve and be great, make lots of money, or you can live in a socialist world and let other people make the money for you, and press the button on the boot, and let the boot open by itself, and eat the I don't want to get into this, but anyway, the long and the short of it is, one must think that be careful what you put into your body, because it can just denature your thought process. And that's it. That's my kind of, that's how I'm starting to think, and how the world is behaving. I mean, the world's in a crazy places. Also in the US, I mean, it's actually heartbreaking to see what's happening there. Heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
It's the greatest country in the world, absolutely the greatest country in the world, and it's been great from its history and where it's come from, and the trials and tribulations. So yeah, it's just a very sad situation. And a lot of it's got to do with the preaching of, it's making people, you eat the wrong food, it's gonna, I don't want to use this word, but it's the only way I can describe it. And I feel that if you eat the wrong foods, it's going to make you stupid.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to make you stupid and triggered.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we keep this rolling too long, one thing I'd like to ask all of my guests is, if there was anything that you could share to anybody that's just starting to get into their health journey, what do you think the most important thing would be?
That's a great question, and I have an answer for that. A lot of people that start the ketogenic diet, they overthink it. Because you've got all these. Because why? Because they've been probably watching mainstream media and watching all these nutritionists, and they can be sold these programs on how to become keto in X amount of time. Is people are entitled to make money, but I didn't go into a nutritionist. I did my own research. There's so much great info out there, and it's the most natural thing to eat. Just eat the right foods. And how do you eat? Just get the list. There's plenty of lists online. There's like a green, orange, and red list. Stay on the green. Don't veer off. Just stay with the green stuff. That's all you put in your system. When you're going through that keto flu, they call it. If you are having a hard time, just keep on going. Keep on going. Winston Churchill. If you're going through hell, keep on going. That's how you get through it. And just understand this, that carbs is highly, highly addictive. So you've got to understand what's going on in your body, and the addictive nature of carbohydrate. And everybody has a different time period with regards to their metabolic health. So their adaptation period will vary. And that's one of my, I'll finish with one of my very, very good friends who was pre-diabetic. He's 180 centimeters, and he was 107 kilograms, and he had a big issue owing to the fact he had this pre-diabetic problem. And he said, Sean, what do I do? I said, listen, if you don't take care of yourself, you're going to you're going to end up having to use insulin. You can see it. I mean, he sent me I've got the before and after pictures. He was so overweight. His arches were collapsed. He was literally standing his feet were like flat, and he was swollen, absolutely swollen. And his personality is so dedicated. He adopted the ketogenic diet. He saw the results. He started doing intermittent fasting. 3 months later, he was 33 kilograms lighter and lean and ripped. He had a hip resurfacing operation. He was on gout medication. He stopped the pain meds.
It's awesome. And I love seeing stories like that where people completely reverse their metabolic syndrome by getting their blood sugars under control. And it's a really incredible thing to watch.
Yeah. But you've got to, he is a formidable athlete. And he's got that mental aptitude, which helped him apply it. And nothing comes easy. Just remember that. Nothing comes easy. If you got to be able to put the effort in, because effort begets reward. And nothing comes easy. There's no quick fix. You got to put the effort. Even if you adopt the ketogenic diet, you have to exercise. You have to exercise. Okay? You can lose weight, no problem, if you calorie constrict, regardless of diet, regardless of what you're following. But the ketogenic diet just makes it so much easier because you don't get the angry feelings and you get so much healthier. Just from various benefits of it. So that's my final point is you've got to be dedicated. You've got to put the effort in. You have to, let me stress, you have to put the effort in. Nothing comes easy. Yeah.
I love it. And it's the truth. And sometimes it's unfortunate that you have to struggle, but I think in the darkest places we find ourselves sometimes. So even though things may initially be a struggle, we may learn so much more about ourselves in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's the art of war. If you don't know yourself, doesn't matter if you know other people, you're going to lose. You've got to know yourself. It's so important to understand who you are and to know yourself. And not to live in other people's shadows. Not to stand. What do I want? That's the thing. Is what do I want? Not what Joe wants. Not what Sally wants. What do I want? And a lot of people don't. We're caught up in having to always be accepted. Really,
I love
live
it.
and let live. Live and let live.
I love it. Well, Sean, if people want to find you, how do they go about doing that? Social media? What's the best avenue?
Instagram is my go-to platform. Of course, I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter, but Instagram is my biggest platform. But I do tag along on the other platforms as well.
Awesome.
So. Yeah, and that's it. I'm always available for comment. They just have to reach out to me in the comments. I always check my comments like emails. So if I'm not on it immediately in the morning, I always go and see the newest. I reach out to the newest. I don't do direct messages, but I always check the comments. And the reason why I like to do that is because other people can refer to who have similar questions. They can just check the comments as well. So if they see a similar question with a similar answer, they don't have to waste time actually asking. They can get the info there.
I love it. Well, I'm so thankful that you spent some time with me today and talked about
your thank you for having me.
And
thank you for having me.
I'm so appreciative. Thank you.
Yeah.